guys, welcome to the Dead Horse podcast. This is a kind of special podcast because it's only me and Arvind. Tejas is settling into a new gig in Hyderabad, and it's Ashwin's birthday today, so he's out celebrating. So the two of us decided to do something a little bit different. We decided to spend today's podcast talking about dialogue systems in video games. It's as you can guess, it's a topic Arvind is kind of an expert on because he's built his own dialogue system for his games. So yeah, let's dive in without any further ado. So Arvind, like, how
Hey,
did why
what's up?
when did you decide that you're gonna make a dialogue intensive or dialogue heavy game?
It kind of actually just started with what I could program best. Like when I started learning like computer programming in 10th or 12th,
Yeah.
like we had those class projects where you had to make something. So I chose to make a dope wars clone. So
Okay.
so for that, I needed to implement certain screens that pop up and trading systems. Like you had
Yeah.
that actually had a simulated kind of it would be a stretch to call it an economy, more like it's kind of like prices are kind of decided randomly based on each city's seed. So what I tried to do was that each city was in my dope wars clone. Each city had a certain uh, tendency to favor a few drugs. So the prices there would be
Okay.
higher for that. And so
Okay.
for that, I needed to have lots of screens, like a buy screen, a sell screen, a screen to buy weapons. And there was
Okay.
a JRPG style combat system with the police. So yeah, so like I needed to implement all of these screens in Turbo C++ because that's
So you started with UI essentially. You
yeah,
started with an
yeah,
intensive focus on UI programming,
yeah. It
which
was
I'm
pretty.
assuming led into programming a dialogue system.
Yeah, exactly. At the point, like all of it was in graphics mode, so I had to draw each individual pixel
Okay.
for that. So drawing all of that Windows, that eventually led me to when I was in college. So I started learning Windows programming and like SDL and everything. And yeah, that's just and and yeah, that's just how I started out. When I started out, like Atypical RPG was a game that was basically me making fun of college because I hated college. So,
Okay.
so for that, it just made sense to make a game that was also a kind of parody of RPGs and all that. Like yeah, like Atypical RPG is a pretty like I think it's a good sort of analytical piece because you look at it and you see, okay, this is a person who's frustrated with college, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So it just kind of led from there, yeah. and
Okay.
and I've always like been a fan of games where like I could influence the outcome of the story,
All
and
right.
and those games generally were like role playing games. So
So let's talk about Will Fight for Food. The dialogue system in Will Fight for Food is pretty different from dialogue systems you'll see in most like the most popular dialogue system in video games today is probably BioWare's Mass Effect and now Dragon Age dialogue system. Would you agree? The dialogue wheel
like I
is
wouldn't
prob
certainly say it's a very popular system, but I actually think that it's a step back from the usual
well,
conversation
I'm not
piece.
talking about best. That is subjective, of
Oh,
course. We all have our own preferences on the
yeah.
kind of dialogue systems we'd like to implement, but it's the most popular one. It's I immediately when you say dialogue system for most people, Mass Effect and Dragon Age 2 are what come to mind, right? These days,
Yeah, I guess,
BioWare
yeah.
have kind of made that a staple.
Yeah, yeah, you could say that, yeah.
So yours is like, first of all, explain the way your dialogue system works in Will Fight
Yeah.
for Food and Unrest.
Most of the conversations in Will Fight Food are your normal RPG conversations. You have a list, and then, but key conversations in the game operate on a different level, where it's like instead of actually just choosing something, it's more of a puzzle where you need to figure out how to say something as well as what to say. So the idea is that you either agree, disagree, or be indifferent for like what the welfare for food system only works if somebody is asking you a question which can be answered in an affirmative or negative or non-committal way. So you say yes, no, or maybe, for example, and then you also select your tone and your body language. So the idea is that if you say yes angrily, and if you say yes normally, or if you say yes timidly, so the idea is that the person's response should be different. So it is kind of conversation as a puzzle, basically. We provide a lot of hints about the personality of the person who's asking you this question. And the whole idea which I was playing towards was that just saying something is not enough. So I was thinking the next step should be how you say something. It sounds very Peter Molyneux-ish, but yeah, that's what I was trying to do
Well, yeah,
here.
you're adding body language and mood and tone to normal conversation systems, and you're
Yeah.
adding you're adding like you're adding mechanics, you're adding game mechanics to conversations, right? That's
Yeah.
You're not making it a binary. Just click on this and
Yeah.
hear the next piece of content and move on. It's not that simple.
Yeah, and yeah, at the same time, like what this system, there was the advantage of this system was that it offered like a lot of possible outcomes. Like there were five different possible tones, five different possible body languages, and three possible yes, no, or non-committal responses. So that's five into five into three. That's 45 different permutations which you can have for a single question that somebody asks. So yeah, on one hand, this is this offers like way more opportunities to express yourself. But on the other
On the
hand,
other hand, voice acting for your games will be a nightmare.
yeah, not like even if we don't use voice acting, but uh, actually scripting for 45 different possible outcomes is insane. So we actually boiled it down to six, seven different outcomes most of the time because it just wasn't possible with our like zero budget.
Yeah, I mean, it's not feasible. It's not feasible to spend the amount of time writing down 45 unique dialogue options for a single conversation. Uh, Obviously,
Yeah, yeah,
that
it's that kind of thing where like this is one part where manpower helps a lot because one writer can actually. So at this point of time, I was the one doing the writing and the programming as well. So
okay.
and yeah, and my teammate Ian was also writing and he was scripting.
All
So
right.
so two people like it wasn't possible with just two people.
Yeah, it's not feasible. It's clearly not feasible. But to move on ahead, like I mean,
Yeah.
your dialogue systems aren't just. I mean, with unrest, of course, you're taking the next step. The dialogue doesn't just affect one person; it can affect an entire faction now, right? Your
Yeah.
choices with
Yeah.
certain people
Yeah.
will affect the way
It's
their faction reacts to the player as a person.
Yeah, and it's not really a never before done thing. Like many Fallout games, I think have done this, and like pretty much most RPGs, old school types, have done this. But yeah, with Unrest, we're actually scaling back the complexity because like there's a lot more content in Unrest. So we
Yeah,
are actually like instead of going all aboard with like body language and tone, uh, we've axed the body language part and the tone part at this point is basically just an indicator of what the response is. So yeah, then the reason we took this decision was because like we had like suddenly the game was very big and we had to get a new writer who
yeah,
so getting them used to this wasn't feasible in such a short time. So that's why we scaled the complexity back a little bit. And especially because in Will Fight for Food, uh, that game was it was the playtime is short, but the possibilities are very spread out. So it's kind of like you can fight anyone at any time, and like all of these weird possibilities can happen. But
yeah.
so yeah, that kind of stuff to make it to have the same level of complexity over a much longer game, like 4 or 5 hour game. That just
Yeah,
wasn't
it can
possible
also
with
get
that. Yeah.
tedious over a 4 to 5 hour long game. It can also get a lot more tedious to play through an elaborate conversation multiple times so that you get the right answer or the right solution. Although I think the thing you're stressing on with unrest is that there is no right solution.
Yeah, and
The
even
story
in
will
Will
keep
Fight for
moving.
Food, yeah, like there was no like you didn't have to repeat any conversation at any time. Like whatever was the result. So oftentimes what would happen is that you would just screw up the conversation, and once or twice there was even like somebody could get violent as a result. But
Okay.
yeah, like the whole idea is that we don't want somebody to do the whole adventure game thing where it's like you do something and you fail a step, so then you go back to step one and then you start again. So we didn't want to do that. But to have
I
consequences where you can fail in multiple different stages. And like when your system affords people to fail in like 44 different ways, for example. So that becomes very tedious to actually implement. And it's just like impractical pretty much.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an easy way to frustrate the player, right? I mean, who wants to be wrong 44 times and then like finally you get the right answer? It's not going to be a great moment that a player is going to remember. Uh, but on the other hand, looking at the kind of decision, this is like you said, you scale back the system, and looking at the kind of dialogue system you have, I'd point for me personally, I'd point the lineage of your dialogue system more towards classic old school adventure games, wherein conversations and puzzle solving kind of went hand in hand as well, like the old Monkey Island games and stuff like that. But you've taken out the zany puzzle solving aspect where you have to combine four items in an inventory and then go have a conversation with someone and like solve it. And you've made the conversation itself the puzzle. Uh,
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I think one of the thing that is in all of my games is that you have to read the person who you're talking to. Like most of the role-playing games, even some of my favorite ones, uh, like you could have the same conversation at the at the near the start of the game and near the end of the game, and the player knows that okay, this is what I have to do. Like if the player is like, okay, I'm a lawful good person, so then they haven't really learned anything through the course of the game that has really changed their opinion, kind of. But like, the thing I often like to do is that you have to slowly learn about the characters who you're talking to. So you actually know that okay, what if you say something to them, what's going to be their effect on the that person.
so it's like life, I imagine. Even if you are a good person, if you trust someone, say twice, and both times they let you down, then the third time you should automatically build up some sort of okay, it's not worth giving this guy money. He's going to dupe me again.
Yeah, yeah, could be. Yeah. Like I don't think my games are as complex as life because that's like
Well, no, that not that level of
yeah,
complexity, but you're saying that the experiences the player has with the character should make them aware of the character's tendencies, right?
yeah,
Good
pretty
or bad.
much. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, there is going to be a certain level of redundancy because it's still a game and it's still a system with limits, right? Dialogue will never be as complex as real life dialogue because the flow will always be a little bit off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about when you started designing your dialogue system for Will Fight for Food, or let's talk about Unrest because that's a more recent experience.
Yeah.
And you say you recently decided to scale back the puzzle elements in your dialogue system. Is that correct?
Yeah, like from Will Fight for Food, like I wager it's still pretty complex compared to most like current games, but yeah, like compared to Will Fight for Food.
So now that you scaled it back, so now that you play through the when you play through the conversations in the game during testing, does it still feel like you're playing through a conversation, or does it feel more like a standard adventure game conversation or a standard
No, I
RPG game
think
conversation?
like I am not the best person to judge my own game, but I think it's pretty like it reminds me of the best part of role playing conversations. And like more interesting thing is that even though we have scaled back the body language and that part, one part where we have increased uh, the thing is in terms of the actual opinion tracking. So like Will Fight for Food just had a single opinion variable from
All right.
0 to 100. You had and like 100 represented. the person likes you very much, and like zero represented they hate you.
All right.
And but in unrest we have three variables tracking the same thing. So it's like friendship, fear, and respect. Like this is like I elaborated on this during like Kickstarter and everything too. But yeah, so the idea is
Yeah.
that
Well.
yeah,
Okay. So these three parameters are the player has. I suppose these three values with every NPC in the game that they can talk to, has
yeah,
this
and
relationship with the
yeah, the
player,
idea
and
is that
based on where the meters are, you can determine how you converse with them.
yeah, the idea is that like a single opinion variable isn't detailed enough to actually like represent like complex conversations with. Mm.
Okay.
So yeah, you can like hate someone and still respect them for their guts, for example. So that's the idea which we are trying to like trying to experiment with.
All right. So now, just to like get a little bit more clarity, can you as the player determine what your values of fear, friendship, and respect are towards any NPC you're talking to, or does every NPC have this value for the player in the game?
No, I mean like we like the values are visible. Like as when you're conversing with them, the values are visible.
No, no, but those values, they are the NP that these are the values that the NPC feels, right, towards the player.
Yeah,
Correct?
yeah.
It's not the other way around.
No. It's what the
Yeah,
NPC feels about the player because
yeah.
like as soon as you start telling the player, okay, you should feel like this towards some
No,
NPCs, like
no. Then I mean,
that's
you're
yeah,
you're breaking the player out of the experience at that point.
yeah.
All right. So now that like you have these values and like every NPC in the world, and these values I'm assuming are dynamic and they'll change as the player does multiple actions across the story. Uh, did you guys ever think about say adding another subtler layer of complexity wherein if the NPC is in a certain mood, those values will fluctuate?
No, like at this point, no, it's not. Like we
Yeah.
haven't reached those levels of complexity where like we
Okay.
like the bed, like an NPC is like, oh my god, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Uh, so yeah, I'm feeling extra grumpy today. Yeah. Like for
Okay.
that, you would need a role-playing game where you live in the same location for a good period of time.
Well, not even necessarily that. What you need, in my opinion, for that would be an AI state machine in which, well, not randomly, but based on events that happen in the world, the NPC's mood can fluctuate over time. And
Yeah,
not
but
just, but for that, yeah, you're right. You need the world to be persistent for
yeah,
that to work.
yeah, it might actually work in a game like Ultima,
For
but
sure.
yeah, but if you only like meet with a person like let's say 2 or 3 times, so if you meet them just one time, then whatever they talk to you about would like that would just be their personality. You wouldn't think, okay, this person is actually a nice person, but today he's in a bad mood. You just think, okay, this guy is a bad person. You know, and even 2 3 times, like the player might. Uh,
It's not enough to develop a real clear idea of what this NPC is. So you need to do what, let's say, what a lot of movies do, where you need to telegraph quickly what this character is all about. Correct?
Yeah, and 2 or 3 times, and if the person's mood changes, then they might appear inconsistently written. Like this
Yeah.
happens a lot in games. So people are more uh, more predisposed to thinking that this person's writer just sucks, rather than that like this person has had a mood change. So I would actually say that this kind of thing would work best for a game that's like The Walking Dead, where you spend a lot of time with single characters, so that
Yeah.
you know that okay, this person is in a bad mood and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I think in a persistent game with a persistent world wherein you have a relationship with the characters and you can see what the events that are happening are and understand how they feel about them. It'll be more there'll be more clarity towards why they're feeling a certain. Anyway, back to dialogue system. Let's talk about why did you decide to have, like, I've seen the Will Fight for Food dialogue system. I haven't played it personally. I've seen.
Yeah.
Did you decide up front that your dialogue system was going to be that complex?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, that was a decision from day one.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, in this current generation, everything's about being simpler, right?
Yeah.
Design is supposed to be more accessible to players.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say? I mean, why did you decide
Like I
to
don't
do
know, like the main thing was that like I had this dialogue system in a typical RPG, which was also uh, like select tones and everything. But that
that?
was a bit like it was very rough, and it was there were certain elements I wanted to improve. So yeah, that just came naturally from there. Like uh, most of this planning was done in paper by me. Like there wasn't much external feedback when except when I had implemented it. So the whole conceptualization was just me sitting on with a notebook and thinking about like what the dialogue system could do.
So yeah, like let's talk about that design process. Like let's talk about uh, what should a good dialogue system do in a game according to you? Like not every game needs a dialogue system, but once you decide you're putting a dialogue system in your game, what do you think it should be able to do?
So the purpose of the dialogue system, like having the player choose their dialogue,
Yeah.
is to express themselves, and this is something which is like in you can say this about any game, any genre, any designing. Like if you are telling the player to choose from dialogue choice A or dialogue choice B, the whole idea is to let them express themselves properly in the game. So then, in terms of evolution of dialogue choices, we have pretty much just come to the point where it's like a conversation tree, and we have stopped. Like a conversation tree in Fallout One works in exactly the same way a conversation tree in Fallout New Vegas works. Like right down to the perks and like your stat checks and everything. So I think that the evolution of dialogue in games has stalled. Like especially games which are supposed to let you express yourselves, like role playing games as we call them.
But I think the reason it's stalled. Well, I wouldn't even say that it's stalled. According to me, the thing is, I think you look at a game like Mass Effect, you look at a game like Dragon Age, and the dialogue in Dragon Age is, yeah, you're right. Dragon Age and Baldur's Gate, there's not a lot of evolution between those two dialogue systems.
Yeah.
But is I mean, and also when you say that, like, the point of dialogue is to let the player express themselves, that's not necessarily true. A lot of Tim Schafer games, I don't feel, are necessarily about letting the player express themselves as much as they're about watching the players watching Tim Schafer express himself. It doesn't
Yeah, that's a
necessarily
fair
always have
point.
to
Yeah.
be, huh?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, like you can say that, yeah, like it's a very weird distinction because it's like, okay, at what point is the designer just watching like himself and seeing, oh yeah, this is ha ha ha, I'm so good. And at what point is the designer thinking, okay, what would
Well,
the player want to do in this situation?
I think it's an even split, right? You can't ask any self-respecting writer to sit down and just write entirely for the player. They're going to have to write a little bit for themselves too.
I'm not like,
Because it's not possible to detach yourself completely and go, what would the player think, and just write that down. You at some point, like, it's what you think is cool is going to bleed in.
yeah, I guess, but yeah, like at the same time, I'm not entirely sure because like it's not a versus kind of thing. But you know, the main
No,
problem
it's
here
not.
is
It's
that
not a versus kind of thing. I'm saying that it's a symbiotic relationship. They're not necessarily one against the other. But I think, like, I mean, you said earlier that games are not about writers. Dialogue systems are not about writers expressing themselves. It's about allowing the player to express themselves, which is correct. But you cannot divorce that entirely from a writer expressing themselves. Then again, if the writers express themselves too much, you get the ending of the Mass Effect franchise.
yeah,
Uh,
or like any what do you call that quantic dream game.
sure.
But yeah, no, I think as a designer, if I ever include a dialogue choice in my game, that's because I think that okay, for a player, making any of these choices is equally legitimate. So if an NPC asks a question and I just have two dialogue choices saying yes or no, so my reasoning behind having those that choice in itself is because I think it's a worthwhile choice to present to the player, and I think that okay, many players will think will choose any of the other. So if you extrapolate that, so the idea is that you need to for a system to evolve, it needs to enable the player to express themselves better. Uh, so with the
So,
idea
so
with
should we start thinking in terms of dialogue system? Should we start thinking beyond in terms of just choice?
yeah, beyond, yeah, I guess, yeah, like it should be about the player expressing themselves. So I think games exploring tone is a thing that should be done more often, and tone as divorced with actual content, because oftentimes what happens is like you have like Mass Effect and like Dragon Age kind of thing, where it's like there's like a tone is also associated with a type of reply, and that's always like if Paragon is the tone, so then the Paragon will be like there will be super serious, earnest. So the earnest tone is also associated with being good. Like I would want to play a villain that speaks very earnestly, but is actually like is a very self-serving shepherd. Basically a
Sure,
modern politician, that kind of person.
sure. Someone who's
Yeah,
justifying everything they're doing in
yeah,
whatever for whatever reason, like very
yeah.
very clearly justifying everything
and
that they do.
and yeah, like they have associated general like like for example or like making like
So,
sort of jokes at the expenses of a person with being evil kind of thing. So it's kind of
so I think, like, yeah, I agree. I think the one thing that a lot of modern dialogue systems are missing is the option to pick the good choice and then just check a box somewhere that makes it that you're lying.
yeah, like the most effective villain would be the person who appears like a paragon but is actually negating. And we don't have something like that facilitates that.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting if you could pretend to be the super nice guy throughout while actually lying to people and doing the complete opposite
Yeah.
behind their backs. And to the end, they continue to believe that you are a paragon essentially of
Yeah.
virtue.
In fact, yeah, any systems I think like Mass Effects where you associate just instead of creating actual choices most of the time. Like Mass Effect has some really good choices. I'm not saying, but like you just create these roles. I think that's restrictive. Like you don't just create a role that's Paragon and a role that's Renegade, and in the middle is just like some kind of brain dead person who's just I don't even know what the middle is supposed to stand for. Like I remember 90% of the conversations I just chose either the Paragon option or the Renegade option.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty
Yeah,
like
I like
yeah,
I think we need more I think we need some kind of sincerity button in dialogue systems,
yeah. Yes,
wherein,
that's
like, not even a
exactly
sincerity button, a sincerity meter where the player can just choose the slider and how sincere they are when they say
yeah.
something.
This exact slider stuff, I experimented with sliders for tones and all that in Will Fight Food. So this is like you are going down the same road that I went when I was
Yeah.
making Will Fight Food.
Are you
So yeah,
calling me a less evolved version of you?
no, like that's not just like there's just I don't think you've ever like sat down and said, okay, I want the players to also control both their content of their dialogue and their tone. Like as soon as you start thinking like that, you'll go maybe you'll go down this the same road as me, or you'll try something different.
Yeah, I mean, for me, dialogue is like, for the game that I'm working on right now. I'm trying to avoid writing in dialogue because I don't have the I don't really have the budget to sit down and know, get voice acting done and get the kind
Yeah.
of get any the kind of the amount of writing that it will be required done. So I'm trying to solve that problem by either doing something like having logs that the player can read if they want to find out about the history of a place, or try and communicate narrative in different ways, like try and communicate narrative through visual cues the way Left 4 Dead does, uh,
Hmm.
which
Yeah,
is an
that's
interesting thing.
understandable. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you're limited with budget and when you have to figure out a way to tell the story that you want to tell with the resources you have at hand, right?
Yeah. Plus, I think you were thinking along lines of how much am I like the witness?
Yeah, definitely closer to that than I am to an adventure game or a role playing
Yeah.
game.
I mean,
Like
yeah, it's
that,
a completely valid approach to take. Yeah, not games don't necessarily require any dialogue to tell a
but
story.
yeah, I do completely agree that the mechanics of your game should be about allowing the player to express themselves
Yeah, yeah,
within the frameworks that you give them.
yeah, exactly. And I think most good games let you do that. Like, I actually think that even Gone Home lets you express yourself. Like you can actually examine some stuff, have fun with the objects in the game, that kind of thing. So I actually think like even that game lets you uh, express yourselves in the confines of this house.
All right.
Although I did miss the part where like there was this big couch, and I just wanted to jump on the couch for a while because there was an awesome song playing there, but I couldn't. See, that was one part where I felt really sad. I just wish they had done that. Yeah.
The ability to jump on the couch. They don't
Yeah,
have a jump
exactly.
button, do they?
Yeah, no, they don't have the jump button.
Yeah, that sucks. In a first-person game, the lack of a jump button makes me feel sad.
I mean, yeah,
You should.
it works. Like in, I don't think I ever felt the urge to jump in the Stanley Parable, but, like that
Well,
was the
there
one
there is
part
that
in
one
God.
time you keep jumping off even though he asks you not to.
Oh no, no, yeah, that's more like falling off. Like I mean, like, uh, and if, I don't know if you've seen the ending. What happens if you try to hack and like hack the ability to jump in the game? I don't know if you've
They
seen the ending.
actually had a contingency for that. If you
Yeah,
use
like that's
the
the thing. They have legislated for everything. So you try to hack the game so that you can add a jumping ability, and you can't. Like there's even an achievement for it actually.
that yeah that I don't
Uh,
know.
yeah,
Like
in
I don't think that
that's what I
Stanley
love
Parable
about.
has it.
Yeah,
Like the Stanley Parable is an interesting game in that it is almost in terms of expressing the like a game reacting to the player expressing themselves. It comes as close to covering all its bases. I think it covers all its bases
yeah, it
pretty
does
much
actually.
everything.
At one point, there's an ending where if you think that okay, I have found in a glitch in a level which lets me go off the skybox, but that is also accounted for in the game. So that's what I love. It's a game. Uh, like it's a game playing the player as much as it is a player playing the game. That's what I love about it. It
Yeah,
knows
yeah.
that okay, a player wants to do all of this stuff. So yeah, that's just it's just genius. Like what it does.
Uh, So we coming back to dialogue systems and the kind of dialogue systems. Let's talk about like I know we don't neither of us have a super high opinion of the game, although like as a series I still enjoyed Mass Effect considerably. Let's talk about Mass Effect's dialogue system and what it does right and what it does wrong. I think
Uh,
it made dialogue systems and dialogue in video games interesting again. That's I mean, not maybe for you, but for a lot of people, they got into role playing games because of Mass Effect and the
yeah,
dialogue in Mass
that's definitely. Yeah, so Mass Effect, I actually my enjoyment of the series went down with each progressive sequel. So like I enjoyed Mass Effect 1 the most, then 2, and then I haven't actually I don't think I've even completed 3. Or like I don't remember the point where I stopped playing. So yeah, like
I think with 3, my gripe was that the amount of DLC you had to buy before you understood everything that was going on uh, it wasn't fair at one point. You had to buy close to $20 of DLC on top of a $60 game so
yeah,
that you could
that's true.
understand the plot of the end of this epic series, which is uh, I suppose EA is just they're selling the shit out of this last series in the franchise, but it's kind of like sticking people for money when they don't exactly need to.
Yeah, but yeah, like what I don't like about this is that like what I said earlier about how it
Binary it
associates a
is.
certain, yeah, it associates a certain tone with a certain objective.
Hmm.
So the idea is that you can either be a nice, caring person, for example, like that's supposed to be the paragon kind of thing, buy the book, we
Or
do
just a
this
complete
by
animal.
books. Yeah, or like a very like jerk kind of person who's supposed to just get the job done. So yeah, that's the like I think the dialogue system started with the basic like at the start itself you can see the flaw. Like half of the time you don't know what paragon means in this situation and what renegade means in this situation. And
Yeah.
at any point you have just focused, and I think the game just becomes like that. It's like it's either you are a dick or you are a nice person. So nice person is paragon and dick is renegade, and in the middle is like something like a complete brick kind of person who doesn't have any emotions.
Hmm.
So, so yeah, like I don't know what to. So yeah, like it's a good game, but yeah, like it just shows that like good writing can sort of work around a flawed uh, dialogue system. But in the end, I don't
I
think
think that
Mass
I think
Effect.
Mass Effect works. The dialogue system in Mass Effect largely works because they keep putting in these really good choices. In Mass Effect One, for example, Rex is a really good choice that you have to make. And you have to figure out. That is actually a moment where I thought you're playing with the dialogue system and figuring out a way to save Rex, right?
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a
But
good choice. The point where you have to choose whether to save Ashley or Caden, although for a lot of people that wasn't really a choice.
yeah,
They had decided a long time ago who needed to die.
yeah,
But and even in Mass Effect 2, the choices that you make throughout that campaign determine like who lives and who dies in that final mission. Uh, Although they could have telegraphed that a little bit better. This is what this is going to lead to. The loyalty of the people on your ship is going to determine who lives and who dies in the final mission.
yeah. I actually think the whole premise of Mass Effect 2 was kind of a mistake because,
Mass Effect
uh,
3 completely retcons everything that happens in that game, doesn't it?
yeah, and Mass Effect 2 also shits on a lot of things that happened in one. Like they
Yeah,
just
I think
completely,
Mass Effect 2 is a fine game on its own, but because they break continuity and make it completely meaningless that you went around collecting this epic team in
yeah,
2, and it's just they're just completely not even there in 3, that it's a little bit absurd.
yeah,
Uh,
and yeah, at the same time, yeah, a lot of like just unnecessarily setting up the elusive man, and like,
Yeah, but like plot points aside, I think the one thing that we have to give that dialogue system a lot of credit for is the way it retains choice. Choices made in the first game carry over to the second and then to the third game. That is one hell of a persistent dialogue system.
but I
Uh,
don't actually think that this is a kind of thing which is necessarily down to the dialogue system. You can have this with any dialogue system you want. And I like even the Witcher. Like if you import your Witcher save game, you have certain choices and stuff carry
yeah,
over.
but I
So
don't think you can compare the level of persistence that a game like Mass Effect has and a game like The Witcher. The Witcher remembers some choices. Mass Effect by and large remembers almost every choice that you've made.
hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
even the reporter by the third game is ready for your punches.
like I don't know, like that kind of stuff. Like it doesn't really sound very impressive to me. Like I mean, it's just it's a thing which like in a programming sense, it just depends on you having certain reading some variables that your system has stored.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
mean,
tied into the dialogue system as
I,
such.
the way I imagine it's being done is you are storing a variable, and based on what choice is being made, you are storing the variable at a certain value,
Yeah, exactly.
and
And
then
then
based on that
yeah.
value, you are telling you're calling that variable later on, and based on what the value stored is, you're determining what choice was made.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not something that's tied into the control scheme is great for an analog stick. And it gives you the kind of feel that you're okay, you are watching a space opera, especially Mass Effect 1. Like I get a feeling of watching an episode of Star Trek a lot of the way. I think they even had a film grain option.
Yeah, they did. I think for Mass
Yeah.
Effect One, Mass Effect One was Mass Effect One is easily the best of those three games.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted a like the sequel which Mass Effect 1 promised me, rather than what I actually got.
Yeah, I wanted more
Yeah,
of more the continuing adventures of Commander Shepard in space.
yeah,
I did not want this storyline with the Reapers dragged on. But
yeah.
getting back to persistent dialogue systems and largely the lack of them, even in old school classic games, there's a lack of persistent dialogue systems from game to game, and I think that's going to change now because of stuff like Mass Effect and Dragon Age that we see
I'm
coming out.
actually interested in both Wasteland 2 and Numenera because all of them have some are new ideas. Both of those games have some new ideas about their dialogue system. Eternity, as far as I'm aware, it's not really. It's more of a kind of Baldur's Gate kind of thing. So I'm expecting more conventional for an old school RPG dialogue
Okay.
system. But for Wasteland 2 and Numenera, like Wasteland 2 has a hyperlink kind of base system, I think, where it sort of actually reminds me of Ultima, a 7 or a yes, 7, I think. It was like you talk to somebody about something and then that subject pops up. And also, of course, like uh, I'm not sure. I haven't actually played Wasteland 1, but I'm pretty sure some of it is borrowed from Wasteland 1 as well. And Numenera has their own tides kind of system where it's like certain impulses and emotions are associated with certain tides.
Uh,
Yeah, so I'm
uh,
interested in seeing what they come up with over there.
that sounds interesting. Shadowrun Returns had a very typical old school RPG sort of dialogue
Yeah.
system.
Yeah, Shadowrun
Uh,
Returns was like I like to think of it as a starter for the main course that's about to come. Where like the main course is Wasteland 2.
Wasteland 2, Torment,
Yeah, yeah,
even Double Fine Adventure to a certain
yeah.
extent for me. I'm looking forward to all three of those games and the
Yeah.
dialogue systems in all three of those games.
Double Fine Adventure, I think like from entry, it's a fairly standard adventure game
Well,
layout.
I mean, even a fairly standard adventure game coming from Tim Schafer is going to
Yeah,
be something special, right? I mean, Grim Fandango is a game
yeah,
I
pretty
will
much. Yeah. I
deep.
am.
Like,
Yeah,
I love that game because of its dialogue.
yeah. My excitement for Broken Age actually reduced when I finished playing with the Blackwell series because that became my new favorite adventure game series. So I'm actually looking forward to Blackwell Epiphany more than like the Broken Age right now. But yeah,
I'm
like
looking
Broken
for
Age can be great. I'm not saying it, and I'm pretty sure it will be very enjoyable. They have Frodo in their game.
yeah. They have Frodo. They have I mean they've gone all out to make sure that they're making a good adventure game.
Yeah.
So I'm fairly certain it's going to be fun. But I like again, like Broken Age specifically, I'm going to enjoy because of the dialogue more than because of the dialogue system.
And what I
The
loved about
last
it was
the
that
last adventure game I enjoyed because of the dialogue system was Monkey Island because of inside sword fighting.
oh yeah, yeah, that's the thing which that was an innovation which I want to
Yes,
see more of here. At
that
one
I
point, I actually wanted, like in the earlier stages, when like in its initial draft, Unrest was very crazy. Like it was way more zany, and at that point, I actually wanted something like insert sword fighting there. But yeah, that design will never see the light of day now. But yeah, yeah,
I think
insert sword fighting was
a
great.
conversation simulator in which you have to figure out how to insult someone effectively would are pretty accurately simulate college for a lot of people.
And I also think like some sort of like this would actually work great in like Quantic Dream games where so what you do is that okay you let's say you have a conversation with somebody that's coming up and they are in a room, they are sitting in their living room watching TV. So the idea is that you walk in and you control both what you're seeing and what you're doing. So like you walk in, you pick up a book and you're like, hey dude, what's up? And then the other person is like, no, nothing, not much. And then so like the idea is that you also control whether you are picking up the book or not.
Hmm.
So in such a system, let's say you just pick up a baseball bat and say like, hey dude, what's up? So then like hopefully they will react differently. I'm not sure, just like how complex this system would be. But like this would make it pretty close to real life, like
Yeah, I think it would be about as expressive as you can get. The items that you have can change the way the conversation,
yeah.
not just the items, but like the even
Yeah, this can
uh,
even work for something like so you have an inventory. So for example, in your inventory, you have a new book. So then you go in the room and you are like, hey man, I have this new book, check it out. You know,
huh.
I'm actually thinking that Quantic Dream games would be the best for this kind of system. You know?
Yeah, for sure. I think Quantic Dream games would probably come closest to being able to implement something like this, even.
Yeah.
You know, considering the kind of conversation systems and the kind of dialogue systems that they have in their game, which
Yeah.
is completely different from I think almost everyone else, right?
I'm not sure it's actually different, but I think the level of presentation they have in very different. Like at least in Heavy Rain, like even though the choices are there, but they're presented in a very unique way.
Yeah, they have the whole thought thing swirling around the
Yeah,
character. Press a
yeah,
button, and
yeah,
he like that's the dialogue choice they usually go with.
yeah,
Uh, it's an interesting presentation choice for sure.
yeah.
But I think it suffers from the same problem that any the wheel dialogue choices suffer from is that you're not entirely clear exactly what the character is going to say until they
Yeah,
say it.
yeah, that's a big problem which also Mass Effect has with its, and I think any conversation system which doesn't let you know exactly what you're saying
Yeah,
is going to have this problem.
yeah. I think the obfuscation again is like I mean players have a problem with it again because they want to know what they're saying before they say it. Right? It's
Yeah.
about expression.
And
Uh,
like this is a kind of disconnect which you can't really solve either way. Like because a player like if you are playing as someone, you expect to know what before. So you
uh,
can try and handle it with that, like you are just like a little angel on the shoulder of Commander Shepard, but actually being Commander Shepard. But like that level of disconnect is just like hard to ignore for a player.
yeah, I'd agree. Like it's hard to it's hard when like it's frustrating also for the player when they want to say something and they assume that the dialogue is going to be said that the
Yeah,
choice they're picking is going to say something and you end up saying something completely different.
yeah, that also kind of feels like the game is pulled bait and switch. Like I think actually, like if a player is like, okay, I'm going to say X to a person who's playing here. So if you don't have the X dialogue choice, instead you have A, B, C. The player can actually say that, okay, yeah, maybe the designer didn't think of it, whatever. I just choose one of these A, B, and C. But if you have something that looks like X, and they're like, great, I can finally say X. But then you click on X and then the person says something else. So that is an extra level of frustration that even goes beyond just not being able to say that. It's like the ultimate disconnect. It's like, okay, I'm supposed to be role playing as this character, but I cannot actually role play. So like, I
I have
think
to role
at
play as
least,
what the writer wants me as like this version of the
yeah,
character that the writer wants to role play as.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And this was one of the great strengths of the Ultima series, kind of, especially four, I think, in that. Uh, like even a game that old, like it had this, like you could play as pretty much uh, any combination of morality that you wanted. So I hope the new Ultima, which Richard Garriott is making again, is like that.
Huh. Well, is Richard Garriott making a new Ultima? He's making a new role playing game. Is it
Yeah,
called
it's called a Shroud of the Avatar because EA
okay,
owns the rights to Ultima, and it's
Ultima? Yeah, yeah,
basically
yeah,
a new Ultima.
yeah. It's going to be interesting for sure. I've been looking at the videos of
Yeah,
that world and stuff.
yeah. As
But
for
the other thing I wanted to ask you about is should dialogue only affect a player's morality?
no,
Is
I
that
don't
the
think so.
purpose of dialogue in video games? I think
No, I don't think so. Like
I
pretty much
think
all
dialogue
of the
has to be a little
choices
bit more
I
far-reaching. I think we've not looked at the implications of dialogue, not just morality. We've not looked at the implications of dialogue on economy. You know, like the ability to make not just the player, but a large number of people, rich or poor. Like, if, say you're playing as a politician in a game, you know, as in real life, if a politician wants, he can make a lot of people poor very, very quickly.
Yeah. No, I mean, like in all of my games, I have completely divorced. Like, I don't. The important thing I think is not to judge the player based on an invisible. morality meter, which
Yeah,
because
sure.
like as soon as like I think this is one thing which Dragon Age did well. It's like you could be as evil or as good as you wanted, but like the idea was that only your companions' opinions of you was the measurable thing.
Yeah,
So like the morality of the player should be reflected in what the other characters in the game think of the player character, rather than have a big like you know how Peter Molyneux does it, like grow horns on your head
yeah,
or like
yeah.
give you a
As
halo.
opposed to the
Yeah.
game wagging its finger in your face.
Yeah.
Most dialogue systems, like the most of the choices you have to make through dialogue in games, they are high stakes choices, right? Usually, when the choice comes up to you, when you have to decide whether this person is a murderer or whether they're like innocent, whether you're going to kill someone, whether you're not going to kill someone, whether you're going to save the universe or whether you're going to let it burn. You know, it's a
Oh
very
yeah.
the
Yeah, I mean like
choices are those kind of high stakes choices. There's no lower stakes kind of choice wherein you can have an effect on people, but it's not immediately apparent the kind of effect that you're having.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Like more of those like the Witcher game has a great amount of these kind of choices where it's
Yeah, The Witcher I think comes closest to doing it well, but even there, I think the consequences are always life or death consequences. Like you choose to kill a king at the end of your long relationship with that guy, it is going to lead to mass murders later on in his kingdom because this guy is dead now. And that's don't get me wrong, The Witcher does it really well. They show the consequences of your actions. They show the build up to the consequences of your actions, and they do it really really well. There's still even in The Witcher, there's no smaller kind of lower stakes choice that The Witcher makes, just because of the nature of that story. Fair enough, and just because of the nature of the stories of something like Mass Effect and Dragon Age, like that you don't get to make the kind of smaller level normal choice that people make, not on a daily basis maybe, but that people make sometimes that do affect the lives of others and the lives of people
I'm
around
not
you.
sure. Like the main reason that games don't let you do this is because of the whole idea of bigger is better kind of thing. Where like all of the games have to raise the stakes even higher, and uh,
To make the player feel like something that matters is happening, of
yeah,
course.
and it's like that thing. Like Mass Effect One started with like the galaxy is at stake kind of thing.
Yeah,
So then yeah, that's where you're starting at. So like you can't really dial it down. It's like the thing, right? Where the sequel has to be bigger and better and needs to have more guns and more enemies and more
but I
levels.
mean, isn't it more effective also if the sequel is the calm before the storm? The storm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can say that, but like try telling that to marketing and like
Well, yeah,
tell
I
them
mean,
what you
the
get.
marketing cannot sell the calm before the storm as,
Yeah,
oh, this is the next game.
yeah.
They need the storm.
Especially like yeah, video game marketing, which relies on like, oh yeah, what would frat boys think of our box art? You know? So like yeah, you
Yes.
can't really sell like calm stuff to that market, like if you're targeting that kind of thing.
All right, let's talk about building dialogue systems now. We can talk about I say, well, we can talk to an extent about some of the stuff that I have seen, but it's not really dialogue related. It's more choice related in video games. You're the one who's actually built a system, so generally on a technical level, how did you go about building the system for Will Fight for Food?
I mean, the whole system is divided into events and stuff like that, you know. So uh, it's a in terms of programming, what it's structured in terms of events. So any event can happen based on certain an event has certain conditions and an event has certain effect. So the whole system is based around that. So the idea is to have a uniform set of effects that can be called at any point of time. So that effect can range from a person's like reputation changing to like changing the level to changing whatever changing of the value of a variable, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just yeah, it just it technically I don't think it's pretty similar to what most other games have. Even though when I built this for atypical RPG, I did not know any such system like this because there isn't any manual for this kind of thing. I
Yeah.
just went with what I think. like I needed for that game,
Yeah,
just
it
running from
mostly
there.
sounds like a system wherein selecting choices will alter the value of a variable, and that variable value will have effects later on the game in general and on like a particular character if you wanted to.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Just a word to anyone who's listening to this, that sounds a lot simpler than it actually is to implement. Just to be clear.
Yeah, because yeah, like a lot of things matter. Yeah, because I can tell you that there are like something like
there's a lot of logistic handling that has to go around that simple variable value storing. It's not as simple as it sounds.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff. They're like I think in unless they're like 20 to 30 different types of effects. Uh,
Mm.
and then on top of that, you have to handle which script is loaded in which level and
Yeah.
what is done where.
And in unrest, isn't most of this like, I mean, aren't you using XML to talk to your C++ script?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
This I'm using XML because I needed a database type. It's kind
Yeah,
of
you
like a
need to
database. You
database.
build a
Yeah.
database of events. So that's why yeah, XML seems the most best to at the time which I was building. Yeah, XML had the fastest readers, like
Mm.
reading libraries. That's why I used it. Like
All
nowadays,
right.
like people are using JSON and everything. So I might
Mhm.
switch to that at some point. But yeah, like that kind of becomes problematic once you have a lot of scripts in XML. So that point, yeah,
Well, XML is
it's
also easier to script in. I mean, than anything else out there right now.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. Like technically, without Arvind just showing people walls of pages of code and writing comments and saying this is what this does, I don't know that
yeah,
we can talk in detail about how you go about building it. It in terms of like the way a coder would think. It's not super complicated in the sense that all you have to do is have an interface set up wherein picking a dialog choice like print screens another statement, and
yeah.
and like C out's another statement if you want like ancient C++ stuff, which I've not touched in God knows how many decades now. Uh, and you store a value based on what choice has been picked. If you guys ever like, if anyone out there is ever curious enough on how to do this, just start by like the way most of us started writing dialogue systems. Write a basic, dialogue system in C++ that is just, uh, you know, a, a set of prints, like you're printing out a bunch of choices, and when the player hits one, the first dialogue pops up. You start that way, and you can graduate to bigger things eventually.
Yeah, and
And
that's
then
the easiest
eventually you
way
can knock on
because
Arvind's door and he can berate you for
yeah,
following what I
because
just.
yeah, that is actually pretty easy. But it gets tricky once you have to handle the amount of scripts. Like I think Will Fight for
Yeah,
Food had something like 250 odd scripts running. So yeah, like handling that quantity is a later challenge that comes later. Like you just want to build something that responds to what the branches based on what the player is.
yeah. Building a branch system is pretty easy. Actually, you don't even need to build your own right now. If you want to just make a text-based game, you should probably use Twine.
Yeah, yeah. Twine has a lovely editor for this kind of thing.
Yeah, 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 it makes life really easy for people who
Yeah,
have no interest in programming their own dialogue system.
yeah.
We
I
went
actually
this long
wanted.
without mentioning Twine, by the way, which is weird.
Yeah.
Uh, it's probably the most, people would call it the most revolutionary dialogue system out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's the basic dialogue system that you have in every RPG. It's like
Yeah,
you have a list of choices. They do whatever they branch wherever you want to, and so you can pretty much have any text-based RPG in Twine right now. And
yeah,
Twine
you
is
can
so
make an entire text adventure in Twine.
yeah, and you can also like the most biggest thing is that it runs on any browser. So like yeah, that's all your other problems solved. You don't have to worry about libraries or graphic performance.
Well, it
So
is a
yeah,
text, but you didn't have to worry about those in the first place.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like, if you are building a native application, there are tons of things you have to worry about that you might not want to worry about.
yeah, dialogue systems. Is that about it? Do you have anything you'd like to discuss that you think I missed out on?
No, I think yeah, like I think the podcast has gone on for long enough. We should maybe have
Okay.
do this some other time.
All right. Yeah. All right, guys. That's about it. I don't think there's much left to discuss in this topic anyway. We covered most of the bases I think that I wanted to. Anyway, this is Vivek and I've been signing out. See you guys. Bye.